Welcome back to another episode of Swine Leaders Live, 3 years into Prop 12 from concern to record performance with Brent Hershey. Welcome, Brent.
Hello, Jim. Nice to be here.
You too. There's been a lot happening with the Prop 12, Brent. Let's get right to it. So going into Prop 12, there was a lot of concern across the industry. What were you expecting at that time?
A lot of there's always concern and fear when we move to a different animal production system. When we have to do change, we all know people don't like change. People fight change. That seems to be a daily problem in our society. It's something that affects our industry too. So obviously, when Prop 12 came at us, one of the things we didn't like is it wasn't necessarily our idea. We didn't invent the standards, right? So then right away we wanted to throw rocks at it, and of course it meant a change, obviously. So yeah, at first we saw this, we were concerned about that.
So now you're 3 years in, Brent. What are the actual results that you're seeing at the operation? And then to recap, you're in Pennsylvania. If you feel like giving a background of yourself again, feel free.
So I'm in business 42 years in the pig business. Um, I was running crate production barns most of that time. As we saw this unfolding in the early 2000s, we realized that we're not that putting an animal in a cage like that, we're not going to be able to defend that. As our industry has to be more open about what we're doing, public's simply not going to put up with it. And so changes came along. Our market was also seeing that. The Clemens Food Group, very forward thinking, forward acting marketer of pork and producer of pork in our country, saw that clearly and started to really send a message down through their producers, their suppliers. We've got to make some changes. So the first changes was to go to the highest standard, and they set a time limit when that had to happen. We saw that come into play, and we obviously had, at first we didn't like it, we didn't want to do it, but then we decided, okay, we're gonna study this and come up with a system that we like. So that happened in like 2017, 2018. We did some initial stuff in 2012 or so, I think 13. So then, of course, Prop 12 unfolds in front of us, and we see, okay, we've got this a higher standard, which is about half the time the animals are not in those gestation crates, to the Prop 12, it says they can't be in gestation crates at all. And you can see right behind me, that's our system today. That is a Prop 12 compliant barn. The animals, that's what we chose to. We go with pens of 8 or 9 when in gestation. And so as we studied this thing, we studied hard and we came up with the system we wanted to go with. And so as we got into 2022, 23, this thing was unfolding, and we had decided what change we wanted to do. And we were going to retrofit our barns. We didn't really build new construction. We retrofitted that one site. We kept in the same footprint and retrofitted, and that resulted in 35% reduction in output because we had 35% less sows there. It was a 1,400, now it's 1,025 or so. We had another site, we built another building. It was a 2,000 sow barn. We built a third building so that we could accommodate the minimum the 24 square feet minimum, and switch to the new Prop 12 system and keep the same herd size. So one we built, one we didn't. So that unfolded. There's our journey, concern till today. But here we are. This happened in the summer of 23. We are about ready to mark 3 years. We're 2 months away or so. When the Supreme Court made the ruling, we were ready to roll and did the changes. We actually had our changes done in 6 weeks. So there's where we're at. So here we are 3 years in, and it's just been amazing. Right out of the gate, we saw some positive changes happen. And then what's happened is each year we've been able to build on them. And that doesn't surprise me. We ran crate barns for 30, 38 years. And now we're running Prop 12 barns. We're running, so there's some adjustments to management and to how you manage what you do. I mean, that's typical. But what's happening is every year it gets better and better and better. Production gets better and better.
So touching on how it gets better, Brent, you've hit record performance. Can you walk us through that, specifically piglets per sow, conception rates, and overall production?
So what happened right away, we saw immediately our sows were more comfortable. You look in the background, there's sows, they can lay together, they can spread out, they can move around. I saw a study recently that if a sow is not in a crate and she's got a camera on her, she turns around almost 200 times in a 24-hour period. That's a factual study. So what we saw immediately was our sows were more comfortable. And so the first thing that happened, one of the cornerstones of our system is when we changed our breeding setup, we changed it over to individual pens that take about 42, 44 square feet, sometimes 46. So that was very different in the industry. The industry was doing these release crates and hybrid things to keep the density higher of their animals. But we saw that was going to be stressful to the breeding process. So we put the what we call sow condos in. And right away out of the gate, the very first year, our conception rates climbed. We felt really comfortable, 2%. Well, here we are 3 years in, and we just had a conception rate of 98.3% ultrasound at 30 days. We've never done that. We've never seen anything that high. And we know that's a correct, accurate rate. And our dropout rate from 30 days to farrowing, 2.5%, the typical numbers that you have, 3%, which, 30 days to actual farrowing rates are always a little dropout rate for a variety of reasons. But what we're excited about is right there was proof that our breeding system works excellent. And we're seeing these record conception rates. So that's the first thing. Again, the sows are more comfortable. On top of that, our piglets weaned, we've just completed several barns weaning 13.2, 13.3, 13.4 piglets per sow. So new record highs on piglets weaned. Another thing that happened immediately was our sow mortality, our sow longevity just went up. Sow mortality has dropped. We had some periods of time, 10 weeks, that were under 6%. We are now right around not 10, just under not 9.5% on an annualized basis. And that was an immediate drop from 13, 14% that we were seeing in the old gestation crate systems, which, made sense. The animal's stuck in there. She can't even walk, we're all wearing watches, how many steps we put in a day. That's the next thing we're thinking, to put a watch on our sows and see how many steps they put in a day, because it's basic stuff. The animal's getting more activity, more movement, and it's better for the animal. And we're seeing it in sow mortality. Last thing that happened is our heat stress in the summertime just completely disappeared. And you can see in the background there, those animals can spread out on the floor and get their own space, not against another animal. Now, we obviously have the cooling systems and all those types of things, but we had them before. But before, they were sandwiched in there, like beside each other. If they all laid down, they were smack against each other the whole length. You could see that in any of the old gestations. We don't have that anymore. And so what we think we're seeing as a result of that is heat stress relief. And I'll explain a little bit more about that later.
Yeah, well, let's start with the 98.3 conception rate. That stands out to me, Brent. What's the driving level of consistency, or what's driving that level?
When we wean a sow out of the birthing area, we put her in an individual pen, and it's big. It sucks up space, 7 by 7, 7 by 8, 42, 45, 46 square feet. She's in there by herself. She can turn around, move around. Now she's being weaned. So now she's around other sows, but there's gates between, and we actually doubled up the size of all of our gating. So the animals can't fight. So they're all forced in individual pens by themselves, but they can move around in those pens. So during that time that she's drying up from weaning, she's miserable. Pretty much she's miserable. But because she can't fight, because she can't get mixed up with other animals, it's very successful and it's very healing for her body, for herself. We're kind of protecting her in that individual pen, but we're giving her the room to move around. So we didn't really give up what the industry learned about some individual housing. We're still doing it. We're still doing it with a pen that the animal can move around freely. The next thing happens when we do the breeding, we move boars down through, and these sows, because they can move around, they're spinning in circles. We can look down through 7, 8, 9 sows, and they're all spinning in circles in anticipation of the boar coming. I'll call it out. We call it sow foreplay. Those animals are getting able to move physically in a normal way. At the same time, it's good for their body, it's good for their anatomy. And then as we go to breed her, she's just concepting better. So we believe that's a big thing, that she's able to move around freely prior to breeding. And then the next thing is we don't remix her. She stays in that pen for a couple of weeks. So after she's bred, when we go back tomorrow, I don't know if people are familiar with, typically you breed an animal more than one time. We'd actually do a little more than two. We go back tomorrow, she's still in that same pen. She wasn't fighting with other sows. She was protected the whole time. Now we breed her again. And we believe that's a cornerstone of success to her production because she's in that pen and she's there the next day and the next day. And a huge caveat of that is our labor to run that system is so efficient. We've not seen any increase in labor to run the Prop 12 system versus the old crate barns. None. Same. So here we are. That was a big thing. MPPC has put that message out. Production goes down, labor goes up, exorbitant prices of product. It's all fake news. It's all not true.
So what about the heat stress? You mentioned heat stress is essentially gone. How has that changed performance and day-to-day management?
So there's a lot. So first off, it affects sow mortality through the heat in the summer, right?
Yeah.
Affects that because of no heat stress. The next thing is we do a ton of graphing. See if I can show you in our system, all types of things. We're tracking everything you can imagine. Well, after we went to Prop 12, the piglets are born. There's a lot of science about heat stress on the embryos and the piglets while they're in the uterus. Well, what we're seeing is through the fall and through the winter, we're seeing some production numbers that we've never touched before. And the pig, and we believe it directly ties back to the summer heat stress when those piglets are in the sow, and it simply doesn't happen. So the pigs are doing better. So to kind of give you an idea what that looks like, our numbers got very, very quiet, but we measure mortality in our finishing system at 6 weeks. Okay, because we're all wean to finish. We move all these piglets to wean to finish barns. So at the 6 week mark, we always do a measurement of mortality. And I'm looking at 8 months here, and we just had a 0.68 for the 6 week mortality, but I'm 1.3, 1.4, a 1. That's the range, running between 1 and 1.4 for 8 months. Nothing above that. And that's several barns in each month. Then the next thing that's happening is our entire wean to finish mortality is running 4.6, 4.8. Now we just closed the month of 3.7. That's the entire wean to finish mortality. That's everything from what that we place that literally is slaughtered at the plant. If it dies on the truck on the way to this plant, that's counted in there. So we believe there's tremendous mortalities are coming back from the heat stress that we're missing. Okay. We think it's a part of it. Okay. So there's some hard numbers.
So mortality under 10%. How are you thinking about this in the system?
Under, no, are we talking about the sows
Yeah, the mortality being under 10%.
in our sows?
Yeah.
Like why is that happening?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's on an annualized basis on a sow herd. And there's all kinds of things written about people struggling at 15 to 17, 18% mortality in these sow barns. We think it's just a factor that the animals are getting their steps in every day. They're able to move around, and that's causing just the animals doing better.
Along with the heat stress. Now, one concern has been labor. What's been your real experience in terms of labor per sow per year?
We measure we measure hours worked per thousand sows every 2 weeks. We track that quarterly, yearly, and what we can say right now is there is no change between our crate barns and our Prop 12 barns. Our hours worked per sow per thousand sows. It's how we do it. It's one of what we measure. No change at all.
And when you
So
look at the,
efficiencies are the same as far
okay,
as from that.
what about the last 6 months of data? Are you seeing something that's just working but leading? So more on the leading edge?
You know, when you're in something and you're working a system, we've got great people in our system, and they're continually honing their management skills. And now in the third year, what I'm just seeing is we're hitting some new highs, new conception rates. I mean, they're really tuning in on how to run Prop 12 barns, and it takes some time going through all 4 seasons of the year. There's adjustments always have to happen with the summer and the winter. We had a tremendous cold period in here, a tremendous cold this winter. And so we're just saying that we just see we're getting better and better at it. And we would have expected that to happen.
The final question, Brent, for producers still on the fence about Prop 12, what would you tell them based on your experience?
There's nothing to be scared of. I think it's important to have the right breeding system. Very important. But with that, production levels, in our experience, can go higher than you can accomplish with a crate barn. So you look at, we have a fixed cost to produce a Prop 12 pig. We think it's about between $3.50 and $4 a pig. And that's strictly because the facility that we had now has less animals in, and that pushed that number up. But with the higher production levels, we're offsetting that. We're offsetting that number. So are we at $2 today more or $2.50? I mean, we're talking in the scheme of things, 1% of a cutout cost. And as our production continues to improve, 3-4 years, this could be zero, could be nothing. Nothing. We could make up the higher building cost just with production increases. So obviously that's what we do. We all do that as an industry. We do better and better. I hear all this rhetoric about how we get up every day and check our animals. Well, of course we do. That's what we do too. Any responsible business does that, okay, to take care of what they're doing. It still comes down to the issue of we have something here that we got to fix as an industry. We have to fix this, and this is a fix. And when I look at the standards that California developed, really they were very well thought out. They used quite a few experts, and really the standards they put down. Here we are, 3 years in, and look at this. And I hate to admit it, we should have done this as an industry. We should have fixed this ourselves. We should have seen that we cannot go on like this and we need to fix this. But we didn't. We stuck our head in the sand, and states and people told us what we had to do. Now here we are, and they nailed it. They nailed it. And I'm not here to defend California. I mean, but we do. There's some things they do that are great. I mean, red dye in the food, and there's all types of things you can talk about that they've been on the forefront to say that's not good. Well, their standards for housing sows, they hit the nail on the head.
Well, Brent, we really appreciate the insight on your 3-year journey with Prop 12, and thanks for joining Swine Leaders Live.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Look forward to the future.